Hello and welcome back to the Summer Day Studios YouTube channel. In today's video I thought we would go over a few of the short form modeling tips and tricks videos that we've made, but just kind of do them in a longer form setting so that we can explain in a little bit more detail, just in case those are a bit quick, because sometimes I realize they're quite fast and it's a bit harder to follow. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is a screw. I guess you don't really model these very often. It's kind of like if you're going to be doing something quite high detail. So generally these are pretty low poly whenever I make them. And I think in the video we even only had something like 16 divisions. Could have even been 8. It was pretty low. But for today I thought we'd go with 16 just for a change of pace, I suppose. So whenever I'm modeling something like this, just start with a cylinder. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and just delete all the extra edges that we don't need. We're going to just keep these center ones here that create the cross already, because we're going to be using this as a base to guide the shape of our inset, right, for where the screwdriver would go. I'm just going to use the multi-cut tool to join up these now, okay? So we're kind of taking this away from a triangulated top to quadrulated top, okay, if that's even a word. We're going to go ahead and select this interior cross, okay? Then I'm going to extrude in, and you can really make this as small or as big as you like. If you're following reference, then make it like that. If not, then I'm just going to go with a shape like this, kind of roughly like a Phillips head screw size. Let's even that out and make that a 0.3 offset. A little bit of cleanup to do, just because my extrude has gone a bit crazy here and it's not sure what to do. I'm just going to snap these vertices back into the middle to give us a bit of a cleaner shape. And then here as well, I don't really like how these have, they don't have a flat edge anymore, which they ought to. So we'll change that. Okay. After this, what I like to do is make a few little adjustments to the topology, nothing major, just to give us some extra edges for when we do come to subdivide this and change the shape so it has more of a dome. So I'm going to add some extra here, crossing across, and then delete these ones in here because we don't need those anymore. Next step is I am going to go ahead and select this central vertice. Okay, I'm going to press B on the keyboard, and I'm just going to increase our soft selection radius because we're going to pull up to create the dome shape. Okay, something like this. So we can then go ahead and delete the extra because we don't need these unless this is going to be the world's thickest, biggest screw ever. What we can then do is select these internal faces here and then just extrude in. I don't like to use the default extrude gizmo because if you do, it kind of comes into a point. So generally what I do is after I've extruded, I press W on the keyboard to go to the translate tool, and I can just come straight down and then adjust it from there if I need to, right? You know, maybe I will add some sort of taper. Okay, once we've done that, let's go ahead and give this some thickness, okay? We won't worry about the rest of the screw shape. For now, we're just going to focus on this top part. Then we'll go ahead and add some bevels. So the ones that we need that are going to be quite important are the ones that kind of go across this way, just to have some hardness here. So we'll add a few in here. And we don't want this to be too hard as well, because if you think this is quite a small object, right? A screw, and it's probably been worn down. So these edges here aren't going to be particularly coarse, if that makes sense. Or particularly hard. They'll be a bit softer. So once we've gone in and added those edges, we want to actually get rid of some of these, because these are not going to, these won't have our cylindrical shape. They're kind of going to disrupt that edge and make the screw look a little bit wonky. So we're just going to merge these edges here and then delete the extra ones that we don't need. Okay, we've created a few triangles here, so we're just going to delete these edges. Okay, and if I smooth that, you can now see we're getting a bit more of the kind of shape that we're after. It looks quite soft up close, but if we zoom out, there's a bit more of the shape we're looking for. And feel free to make these bevels harder if need be. It's kind of up to you, really. We'll add in a few extra in the top and bottom. And then we'll go ahead and also bevel our outer edge here. select all those edges. Okay, I'm going to turn chamfer off. And there we go, that's the shape of our screw. And by the looks of it, we don't really have any artifacts anyway, so if you wanted to add more divisions to this, you could literally just smooth it, and you know, it all gets converted to nice clean quads anyway. And there you go, that's our first shape. Okay, so for our next shape, we are going to look at combining cylinders. So I know a lot of people struggle with this kind of thing. I know when I started, I certainly did. So we did one before. We combined, sorry, can't speak today, 2 cylinders, kind of like this, right? But I thought what we'd do today is we'd do something slightly more complicated, since we've already covered that. We'll go with combining 3 cylinders. Whenever I'm combining cylindrical shapes like this, I like to keep it really, really simple. And whenever I'm modeling anything really to begin with, and we can always add divisions later. So for that purpose, we're just going to start with 8, and we don't want these caps, so we'll just delete those. Maybe we'll add a bit of length just to give us some wiggle room, and then I'll just freeze the transforms on that, okay? So what I will do next is duplicate this a couple times. So we want 3 of these, okay? So we have 3 cylinders, and in order to create our shape, there's a couple of different things we could do. You know, I could literally just rotate these out and then move these, you know, into the place that we need them to be. But if we want these to have kind of a bit more of a precise angle to them, we can actually create an additional cylinder and use that as our base to rotate around. So if we position this as our center point, we can then, I have it key bound to D on the keyboard. I'm going to snap my pivot point just to the base here, and then I'm just going to attach it to the ends of this cylinder, okay? Okay, so we have our 3 shapes. And then let's say instead we want this to be at an angle. So what we'll do is we'll use the same cylinder that we had, and then I'm just going to snap the pivot points of these ones here to the interior of this cylinder, because this is going to be like our rotation device. I can then go ahead and hold J on the keyboard and then just snap this. Okay, we'll rotate this, let's see, 45 degrees, 30 degrees even. Okay, and then so you might be wondering, how do we create this kind of shape? So the same process really. We're going to combine all of these 3. And to make this easier on ourselves, what we can actually do is we can just do half of this. So if I go ahead and delete one side of this, okay, because we know that this is our center line, I can come and just extrude these edges, okay. I'm going to snap that to here, so we have this come down at the correct angle, okay. We can then look at this from the side or the front, or whichever way you're modeling this, and just make sure this middle vertex lines up with the center line, okay. I can then pull these down into the middle. Okay, just give those a reverse scale to make sure they're in the center. Okay, so that's creating our center line. I can then pull these up. Okay, so they're roughly at the correct angle for this one. And then we can literally just go ahead and bridge. Okay, make any adjustments we need to so this angle is coming out correctly. Okay, so that's already taken us a fair bit of the way there. And this is kind of like how I like to do it. You just sort of break it down into steps. Okay, so we're connecting it point by point, and this is going to make it easier for you to figure out what needs to go where. We can then go ahead and bridge these ones, okay, and also bridge these faces. Okay, and there you go, you've done it. And then all we need to do is literally duplicate this across. Make sure these are close. Okay, we can then go ahead and combine, edit mesh, and then merge. And there you have it. There's your shape. Okay. And then if you don't like the way this is joining here, because this is looking a little funky, we could even alter the topology here. Delete these edges to make sure this angle is maintained. Pull this out. Okay. Delete these 2 edges here. And then just combine this up to make even quads, and then we have our pole in the middle of the intersection, and then that also works. Really, there's not too much of a difference in it, just kind of depends on how you want your topology to flow. But you can see, really, it doesn't take very long to do. It's just about breaking it down into sort of more manageable chunks, right? So let's move on to the next shape. Okay, so the last shape we're going to make is a cylinder with multiple holes in it, because I do see people struggling with this and they're like, oh, how on earth am I going to do this? I have to make a cylinder and make all these different holes in it at the same time. We can simplify it again. It's nowhere near as bad as it sounds. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to start with a cylinder, but this will not be our end result. We're going to make it out of lots of smaller cylinders. So not 165, that's way too much. Let's start with 16, just for the time being. You can do this with 8 as well, basically the same process. We're going to select our top faces here, and they're going to extrude in. Now, this extrude is going to define how big the holes are within our cylinder. Okay? I'm going to go with something like this. Let's go with 0.3, because I like nice round numbers. And then we're just going to delete this, because we don't need it. And then we're also going to delete this, because we also don't need it. What I'm then going to do is keep this as a holding edge. We're then going to extrude out again, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select our surrounding edges, okay? So it's 4 by 4 by 4, okay? And then I'm going to do this, so we have this kind of shape, all right? And now the width of this is going to define how much space is between your holes, okay, on your cylinder. So make sure you kind of think about that before you do it. We can even do a little test just by placing like one side by side. So I know with mine we're going to have about a gap like this. I don't really like that. I kind of want a smaller gap, okay? So we'll go ahead and shrink that down even more, maybe to something like this. Okay, but the important thing to make sure is that all of these edges on the outside here are flat. Okay, to do that I'm just selecting all the edges, or the vertices, sorry, you can do edges as well, and then just rotating in, or not rotating, sorry, scaling in reverse in the direction they're facing, so X for this way, Z for this way. Okay, and what we've done is we've essentially created a tileable piece of geometry. I'm going to scale this edge in now, because this is going to be our part of our bevel. And it's important that we do this now, because having to do this yourself afterwards could take quite a lot of time, depending on how big your cylinder is. Okay? What I will do next is... This isn't 100% necessary, but I just like to have these edges kind of flowing in one direction, just because it makes for a slightly cleaner result, I think. And then sometimes also I'll have these come out like this, just to give us a bit of extra topology instead of just having these corners. It kind of puts the corner or the pole a step back, which I think makes for a cleaner result. But the more time we spend here, the better our finished result will be. Okay? And then maybe with these as well, we can pull these out a bit, just to make this slightly even. Okay, so that is our base shape. Right, the next thing we're going to do is I am going to edit the pivot point. To access that, by the way, if you're not sure, I have it keybound. I would highly recommend it just to D on my keyboard, just so I can easily access it. But if you want to change it without that, you can double click on the move tool, or the rotate tool as well, any tool that you're using. If you double click on the translate tool, and then you can click edit pivot. I'm just going to set mine to this corner here for the time being, okay? Reason being is because I'm going to duplicate this. Okay, then once I've done that, I'm going to press Shift D, and that's going to duplicate the exact same action. Okay, so the number of times you do this will define the like circumference of our final cylinder and how many holes you have. Important thing to note here is that you do want a certain amount, otherwise the topology might be a little bit too low. I will just go with, let's say we'll just make it a nice round number and do 6. Okay. What we'll then do is we can go ahead and combine this. Then make sure you run a merge just so all those vertices are connected. It looks like we're getting some issues. Now, if this happens, it's because the vertices on each side are not 100% even. Okay, so it is important to make sure that they are, otherwise you are going to have problems. So I'm just going to double check to see if this all lines up. It does seem to on this side. It's not the end of the world, we can quickly go and fix it, but if you have more, it's going to create problems. So I'm just going to make sure that these line up, just by doing the reverse scale trick. Because these points are going to connect, ultimately. Okay, so once we have this shape, I'll just bring this back into the center of the grid. I'm holding down X and translating to get that to snap. I can then use a deformer. If we come up to deform here, go to non-linear and then bend. Okay, it's going to create our bend handle like this. Now, if I try to rotate now, it's not actually going to do anything. We want to rotate this to lie flat with our model. Okay, and now you can see it's rotating, but kind of in the wrong direction. Looks like it's kind of flapping like a bird, doesn't it? We want it to lie flat in the direction of our curve. So I'm going to rotate that one more time by 90 degrees, and then I'm just going to change the curvature to 180, okay, or in this case, minus 180. And then what that's going to do is it's going to wrap all the way around, okay, and you can see we have now created our cylinder. If I go ahead and do edit mesh and then merge, that should then merge these vertices down here, go to mesh display, soften edge, we now have our cylinder, okay, with our holes in it. Instead of having to do this yourself on a already made cylinder, you kind of just create the shape flat and then bend it. It's much easier that way. And then we can just go ahead and duplicate this out infinitely if we want to. Like so. And then literally all we need to do is merge it again, and then you have a infinitely looping pattern. And you can create this pattern to be as dense or as, you know, non-dense if you like, or as you like. So this one's not particularly dense, but we could have this be much larger and have much more holes. We could even take this same pattern and then create an offset. If I delete most of this, okay, duplicate this, just get this to snap to here, and if we rotate this from the middle down to something like this, if we rotate it about 30 degrees till it's in the center. So not everything's lining up 100%, and then had we spent more time creating our base shape, we probably could have got that to work. But what we can do is we can just create a little bit of separation. Okay, so that we don't have to merge all these vertices ourselves, sorry. Combine. Okay. We're just going to select all the vertices for this and then just make sure this is coming out to be around about the same height, because it should be. Okay. And then we can go ahead and bridge these. Okay. I'm going to create one edge in the middle. And then just remove that. Okay, and then now we've gone ahead and created the same thing, but we have a bit of an offset. So we have, you know, one here, gap, one here, gap. And you can see it really is quite customizable, and because we kept it relatively low poly, it really didn't take too much time at all. We could then take our shape and extrude in, and because we've already added one bevel, or one holding edge, we can just incrementally extrude in. So that creates our first edge. Maybe we want it to be this thick, then create another one. Okay, mesh display, reverse. Let's just go ahead and delete. Oh, actually, we don't even need to delete those edges. We can just go ahead and add our other holding edge to the exterior here. Like so. And then smooth, and there you go, there's your shape, you know, and it looks really, really complicated, but when you break it down into the simpler steps, it's really not too bad. And And we have nice even topology, you know, we can go ahead and subdivide this, and it's still pretty even quads. And it took barely any time at all. So that's how we create 3 of those shapes. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do have any questions or you'd like me to go to even further depth for any of these, please do let us know. Check out our links in the description if you need anything related to design services. We have availability, and yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video and got something out of it. Thank you very much for watching, and like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.